in mystery.
Chris, what do you think is the most iconic item of clothing in the UK at the moment on TV?
Well,
a traitor-style cloak, or your missing tie from the 10 o'clock news on Wednesday night?
Well, I think you know, the traitor-style cloak probably pips the tie. I will acknowledge that, despite my relative ignorance, total ignorance about the traitors. I've still not found my tie, though.
Have you not?
No. But the merit of losing it, and actually I think it was worth losing it for this, is that I got to briefly go on Scott Mills's show on Radio 2, because he asked me, well, where's your tie? Have you found it? So I sent him a little voice note saying, you know, and this is still true as we record now, I don't know where it's gone.
Well, and the ripples then spread out, and even I got dragged into this because Martin Lewis put out a tweet to his 10 million followers saying that I'd probably nicked it. So I then had to sort of defend myself again. I mean, I haven't worn a tie for several years.
I haven't worn one all day yet because I still can't find it.
Anyway, I'm going to take my Traitors cloak off because it's quite hot. Oh, also, we did ask the Traitors if we could have one of the real ones.
Oh, yes.
They said no, they're wearing it on the One Show tonight. So we had to get this rip-off one.
So
I'm going to take it off because we will be joined by a Traitors mega celebrity towards the end of this episode of Newscast. But I'm not going to wear this because our first guest is like a political legend and it just feels a little bit inappropriate. But all will unfold and be revealed on this episode of Newscast.
Newscast from the BBC.
Hello, it's Adam in the studio and I have ditched the cloak.
Yes, and I'm Chris at Westminster.
And we're joined by the former Labour leader, Lord Kinnock. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome to Newscast for the first time ever.
First time, yes. It's part of modern days and I'm still catching up.
Are Labour going to win the general election?
We're not going to lose, in my view, but that's about as far as I go. There have been so many false springs and summers. And we got a first past the post electoral system, and the polls give you indications, but they are not the poll. And so everything's got to be taken with a fair serving of salt. I mean, I'm delighted, ecstatic sometimes, about how well we're doing. But we've got, I think, 10 months to go yet.
And I mean, so many people have said to me around this place, oh, is it 1992 or is it 1997? I mean, if anyone's going to know.
It's 2024. I was thinking for different reasons a couple of days ago that even the two elections in 1974 were in different circumstances. And certainly elections of 64 and 66, in which I obviously campaigned, they were entirely different. So there's no rehearsal for any election, and you can find elements of genuine comparison, obviously you can, but there's no rerun.
I was looking back a couple of weeks ago at UK general elections over the last century and a bit, and I think, if I remember rightly, since 1918, there's been 28 general elections, of which the Conservatives have won 18.
Yes.
And Labour.
This is like you're practicing for election night. I love it.
And Labour have won 10.
No, we haven't won 10.
All right, formed a government.
Yes.
After 10. Why is it that Labour are historically so good at losing elections?
It's partly because we inflict problems on ourselves. Both in opposition, certainly, and only to a slightly less extent in government, because there is nearly always, it's not always the case, and currently it's not the case, which is very healthy, so frequently the case that there's a contest in the Labour movement between those who want power within Labour and those who want power for Labour. The other reason is first past the post, because especially in the years since the 60s particularly, when there have been more than the two parties contesting for seats, the division has invariably been in the anti-conservative majority. And in a first past the post system, that gives a real advantage to what apparently has been this monolith of a Conservative Party.
And the Conservative Party now, is this a sort of spectacularly exhausted kind of Conservative Party compared to other times in that timeline?
Yes.
This is like, they've never been like this before.
Yeah. I mean, John Major gave them a new pair of lungs when Margaret Thatcher was toppled and he was put in a place, because he so manifestly was not in any respect Margaret Thatcher. And I was anticipating Michael Heseltine, which I thought would be excellent because he was such a divisive figure despite his great capabilities, which are not in any doubt. And then along comes the utterly normal man off the street, John Major.
Because he was a surprise, wasn't he? People weren't, that wasn't kind of like in the lineup.
He was as surprised as anybody, I can tell you that. And he'll tell you that himself.
But formidably normal.
Yes, exactly. At a time when nobody wrote it down, well, maybe in some editorials, but no strategist said the one thing, John Major, you must be is in every respect not Margaret Thatcher. So you have to be generous and you have to be extremely courteous in all circumstances, not as a formality like Mrs. T, but the genuine article. And John Major was authentic.
Is Keir Starmer, quote unquote, normal?
Yeah. I mean, he...
Does he manage to communicate that?
I think it's very difficult as Labour leader to communicate that because to be normal means to be almost perpetually relaxed. And if you're relaxed, you know, as Labour leader, that the merest erroneous syntax, slip in a reference, half-announced swear word, not that here there's a lot of cussing, but you know, it just in the normality of conversation, then you know it's going to be exaggerated, distorted, blown up, not so much by the broadcast media, but they have to be an echo chamber of so-called mainstream newsprint media. And so consequently, when you know that,
is there an
being
aspect
entirely normal continually is not easy.
Is there something that he's holding back then that you see kind of privately?
No, he's giving full-hearted commitment. But part of that commitment is pretty ironclad discipline, and it's got to be. Now, that can impose a sort of veil between yourself and the public, but it's better for Keir to take that small risk than the bigger risk, the speculative risk of being entirely normal, Keir Starmer, bloke, and man of distinction, if you can see the combination.
What do you say to the critics, and we're seeing this weaponised more and more by the Conservatives, who say there is a central issue about what Keir Starmer actually stands for? And the evidence that is cited for that is look at what he said when he was running for the Labour leadership, and look at what he has said since. And to perhaps caricature that argument, people say he campaigned on X to get the job, and now he's campaigning on Y. In other words, he has junked loads of what he stood for when he ran for the leadership. Now, it is a different electorate, but then what is the voter supposed to believe that he actually believes?
What the electorate already understands, that you campaign for the leadership, if I can adapt a phrase, in poetry, and you lead a party in prose. And that's the difference. What Keir had to do in running for the leadership, and I wasn't in any sense directly engaged with him at the time, but I could see what he was necessarily doing, was to reassure the breadth of the Labour movement, the breadth, that he shared their concerns, priorities, and he would seek to pursue them. Absolutely authentic, totally sincere, no question at all. Now what he has to do is to persuade an electorate of over 30 million that he has constructive proposals that are practical over a period of time without inflicting huge costs on working people. And that's a different challenge, and he's performing it very well.
I'm going to pivot onto your everyday life now, which has obviously changed massively with the death of Glenys, and we're so sorry to hear about that. But the outpouring of amazing stories and affection for her was actually, you could feel just this wave of affection. It was actually very special. How does it feel to be kind of back in radio studios, back in the Lords, back talking about this stuff?
Well, talking to you two is pleasant.
It's like being in the pub at 10:15.
Well, it is a bit when we go to a different pub. But I mean, it's not unpleasant. This is my trade. It has been for, God, I don't remember. And you guys know your way and know your business, and you ask interesting, prompting questions. When I went back to the House of Lords after 4 years absence, and my colleagues, not just Labour colleagues, on the other side too, were immensely understanding, and they were extremely kind. It was a bit going off the high board, because I knew everybody would be very kind, and I wasn't sure.
And sometimes
it can be hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yes, they were extremely kind and solicitous, and I got away with it. Yeah.
And has it made you think differently about some of like the public policy issues that maybe when you were a full-time politician, they were sort of a bit theoretical? And I mean things like the social care system and the NHS.
Theoretical politics has never been my bag.
I suddenly realized as soon as I said that wasn't really a very good description.
Well,
but
since I was a kid of 16, I mean, there is a place for theory in politics, and it's in universities.
But I just mean though, you've lived social care now because you were her carer for so many years.
Well, yes. Without you even referring to it, I would say that I was very conscious because of previously being a constituency MP and being a human being in our country.
True.
You know, with any kind of sensibility that things have been wrong for a very long time. In fact, they've never been right. But with Glenys requiring, over the last 4 years, continual care, it was a different scale of things in the first couple of years that she was diagnosed. But it really rammed home to me that I don't know what people do that can't afford or pay for, whether you can afford it or not, you do it in any case, the kind of care that supported myself and Glenys. And Glenys had supreme carers. They were phenomenal. And they're good friends now. But without that, she wouldn't have had the support and consideration and attention that she needed, and everybody in that condition does need. And it probably would have killed me. Like it does kill other people, or at least it completely eradicates them as people with their own lives. And we really have to do something. Yes, in terms of pay to carers, but that does mean a much more comprehensive health system. And it must be part of the healthcare system that can give support to the aging and disabled population. Now, the reason why in some ways research and development in these areas, like the diagnosing and treatment of dementia, is not in its infancy, but barely reaching its teens, is that before people died. And now, because of the shift in the demography of our country, to which we've not paid as a country enough attention since the 1960s, we just haven't given it the attention. Not many other countries have either. Maybe the Nordics and the Dutch, and that's about it. But we got to catch up with it.
But do you think we're cut out as a country to do that? Because so many people have had to care for a relative and had a really hard time. But yet, as a country, we still haven't gone, right, let's all spend money on social care. Let's solve this. And that's been under all sorts of different governments.
And I suppose to sharpen that, is it perhaps the UK's single biggest public policy failure that successive governments of different political stripes over at least a generation, if not a couple of generations, have somehow not found the will to deal with this, to sort it out?
Yeah. To do it properly, we've got to say to a generation, we're going to have to pay for the future. And it does mean that whilst we vastly value all the voluntary effort, all the love, compassion, consideration that goes into looking after your folks, looking after neighbours, being part of the community, doing things there. We love that. It's great.
But it's not enough.
Not enough.
We have to get rid.
And we've got to have a hypothecated, defined, separate, statutory health and community care tax. You cut the standard rate by a bit, and then you replace it with a tax that can only be dedicated to healthcare and community care. If we don't do that, we won't finance the research in any sphere of medical development. People will die avoidably, and we won't tackle the massive challenges and expenses of simply aging. We celebrate that. We love the fact, I like the fact that I'm 82. That's great. Or I will be in a couple of weeks. But fingers crossed. But you never know. The 80s is bloody dangerous. You know? It's much more dangerous than being in the SAS.
I'm sure David Davis would disagree.
Yes. But when he gets to 80, he'll agree.
But Neil, I have to say, I love the fact you've not lost your touch, because we've had that really long meandering conversation, and by then you still managed to get like your key policy talking point in there about what you want changed to the tax system.
Well,
Genius.
I had to get you believing first, right?
Lifts back the curtain. Neil, thank you very much. It's been lovely to catch up.
Same here. All
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm now going to read out an email that came in on Monday, and it was addressed to Laura and Paddy, just to be clear. And it said, this is on Monday, really not happy with Newscast's spoiler for the Traitors yesterday. You gave no pause between your spoiler alert and revealing that Diane had been a breakout star and had been banished. So to avoid that, anonymous emailer, we're now going to play the Newscast spoiler alert klaxon, because we're going to be joined by Paul from the Traitors. Paul, welcome to our very low-budget castle. This is probably not the grandeur you're used to.
No, the Newscast turret. I like it. This is nice.
It does have a conspiratorial atmosphere, actually, doesn't it?
Does it?
Low lighting, cozy.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do a full admission at the start, which is that because my job entails working for the programme that comes on immediately after Traitors.
So thanks for warming everyone up for
Yes.
No, and then inheriting a colossal audience, for which I'm very grateful. I approached this conversation with near total ignorance.
Okay, that's
So
good.
there you go. And there may be one or two newscasters, despite the incredible popularity of the Traitors, who might be in the same position as me. So I will stand on their behalf. During this
Well, it's better to say that than pretend to know and ask the questions and nod, right?
Indeed, which sometimes when you have the veneer of knowledge as a journalist, you attempt. But in this instance, I don't even have that, and therefore I won't.
What I can't work out is that for the last 2 weeks in my mind, you've been a bit of a villain, but now here you are, like nice, and you're nice.
I don't know which one the act is.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of cognitive distance, of course it is. But however, if you go into a job and you really want that role, then you have to nail the interview, which I feel like I did with Claudia. And then also you then have to follow up with it, because millions of people at home, you've paid them a promise. You said you are going to be a villain, you're going to be dastardly, you are going to manipulate and lie and do all these things, which happens in the show. I'm going to go out there and do it and give it my all. Why wouldn't I do that?
And how do like people that you bump into react to you then when you're like on public transport or in the supermarket?
They love it. I think it took maybe the UK public maybe 1 or 2 episodes, because at the start I think I was really jarring, because in season 1 there was no character like me, and I haven't watched any of the other ones around the world, but maybe it's quite rare for someone to actually go, I am going to be a villain, I am going to be like this dastardly. So I got a little bit of online, I got some hate, some negative comments and all that type of stuff, but they were all about the character that I was portraying in the show, so it didn't hurt or offend me in one bit. If anything, it's positive because it's showing that you are actually getting what I was trying to do. But then now I've left, people are being really positive and really nice, and I'm even getting now, they miss me.
So the central
you
premise,
would say that though, wouldn't you? I don't know if that's a tactic.
So the central premise, help me out here if I get this wrong, of the whole show is this idea that some people are sort of nominated to perform this role as traitors.
Yeah.
And then at some
they
point,
can also recruit extra ones.
Indeed, and then there's the point of the big reveal.
Yeah.
Which brings me to this sort of overlap that I find with the job that I do here at Westminster.
Yeah.
Which is not as direct a point as you might be expecting me to make, which is that I've come to realise the importance of the enduring power of character.
Yes.
And so I suppose, is there something in your character prior to doing the telly stuff that allowed you to do what you did so well?
Yeah, well, there must be, and it's such a great question, and it does link politically as well, because I think a lot of what enabled me to do so well as I did was just charisma. It was just confidence. It was just I had such a self-belief, and people... You gain love, you gain trust, and then once you have that from a fellow human, you can kind of manipulate them, and you can incept their thoughts, and you can steer them.
Where does that come from?
I've no idea where it's come from. It must have come from, I reckon, early childhood. I was really poor in school. I was the class clown. I realised if I can make people laugh, then I can make people like me. If I can make people like me, maybe they can love me, and then from that on, in the corporate world where I am now, I've used it to my benefit to close, really large kind of business deals in the telecoms industry and put me in good stead for life. I mean,
but you don't just love bomb people. You said you were cruel as well.
Yes, well,
it's
exactly
the other side
right.
of the coin.
Well, this is the thing. You're put into an environment where the rules of your reality are unlike on the opposite, the normal world, right? So you can lie, you can manipulate, you can deceive, you can do whatever you want, and that is well within the game. So my perspective is if I'm given that, then I will take it to the absolute line.
So it's cruel within a format, it's cruel within a game, as opposed to authentically cruel.
Exactly right, yeah. And I think that's where, I mean, there was, at the start, I was going, oh, he's a sociopath and he's this and he's that. And it's like, no, I know the line, I know the limit, I know the rules, so I'm going to absolutely use them to my greatest ability. Whereas outside world, you obviously can't do that.
Did you go in...
It's good to hear.
Did you go into this show with an instinct that your character was well suited to it? Or did you learn stuff about yourself?
No, so, and it's funny, you have such amazing support behind the scenes from psychologists and welfare people to make sure that you're mentally in the right place. And one of the questions are, did you learn anything about yourself? I didn't learn anything about myself from when I was in there. I know that sounds crazy to say. However, I've never tested my ability in such an extreme manner, because in normal world, you can't do that because you have to be a nice person and, people that are bad.
You say that almost with a sort of reluctant shrug.
You have to be a nice person. I wish you couldn't, but no, there's a line that you have to toe. And if you want to be successful, then regardless of whatever industry you're in, you have to toe the line. You have to be nice and respectful and all that type of stuff. Even in the PMQs at certain points, I bet you the guys want to actually rip each other apart, but there's a line and there's rulings. So in the Traitors, it's exactly the same perspective.
Do you think people, and I say this as I say, having not seen a frame of it, but do you think people, as a viewer, Adam, do you find yourself transposing elements of your own character onto the people you're watching, and then therefore imagining how you might react in that scenario? Is that part of the dynamic?
I have to confess that I don't watch it religiously, but anytime I do watch it, the reason I enjoy it is because it's like being on a mini break at a luxury hotel. And then you talk to other people and everyone's got a different reason for why they like it. And that's my theory about why like 10 million people tune in, because there's like 2 million reasons to watch it. People get what they want from it.
Yeah, and I think, especially with this season, so season 1 was amazing, but it was a concept. So they didn't have a fan base, and it got really popular and people loved it. Season 2 has a fan base, and season 2 has capitalized and absolutely took season 1 to the next level. The games are even bigger. The people feel like they know the games. They feel like, well, you know,
and that's a hard thing to do. Sorry to interrupt, isn't it? But in a disaggregated era of multimedia and streaming and a million platforms and a million formats.
Oh, but this is the thing. You can also experience it how you want. You can watch an episode, or you can listen to Ed Gamble's podcast, or you can go on social media and see the highlights. So, like, I'd seen your bow long before I saw I'd seen it being shared long before I actually watched it on iPlayer.
But I suppose it's that broader point that it's harder now than it's ever been to get cut through, to be noticed, to be talked about on the train, on the bus, in the office, because there's so much choice, and yet it's done it.
And you make a really interesting point that we are bingers at the moment. We are telly addicts. We can't wait. We need to watch everything in one go. We need to watch 4 or 5 episodes and go to bed late and be tired in work in the morning. Whereas what the Traitors did, and I can't remember the last time a television show did it, they got the UK public probably about 8:30, 8:45, excited, palpable excitement, where they can actually go and sit on the couch as a family and watch something, and not only watch it, experience it and feel happy after it and anger after it, and oh my God, I can't believe that, I need to watch it. The best thing is it's on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So when Friday finishes, there's almost a withdrawal symptoms that lasts all the way to the following Wednesday, where people, they cannot wait to see what's coming next. And it's just fascinating.
Right. I am a terrible liar. Or am I? But in your famous episode, the round table started with Claudia saying, we're now going to do something different.
Of course.
I want you one by one to look around this table at all your fellow contestants, look them in the eye and say, I am a faithful, with the knowledge that
not all of them
were traitors.
Right.
Yes.
And you did that completely, amazingly, not even a flicker of doubt. How do you do that?
Because I was a faithful at that point in my brain.
Right.
So once you get picked, so there's 22 people, they're all faithfuls at the start. 3 of them then get picked to be traitors. And then them traitors meet every night and they kill someone the next day. Not literally, or that is against the rules. So during the day, I have to be a faithful because that's the way that I wanted to play it within my character. And that's why I betray some of my fellow traitors, because for me, it would look weird for my character to defend someone that is so obviously doing things that I would call out as a traitor, and that would lose my standing in the group.
So to con other people, you've got to con yourself.
Well, the problem with lying is that it's a lie. But if it's true to you, it's not a lie anymore.
Exactly right. I think I could pass the polygraph by saying that I was a faithful at that point. And I think Harry is quite similar as well, who's the other guy that we bonded with. I genuinely believe that in that environment, in the rules of the game, that I was a faithful at that point, and I believe I could pass a polygraph. And what's amazing about that show is the faithfuls, towards my departure and now, started looking more dodgy and more like traitors than what the traitors did, because of that pressure, because of that stress. Every night could be my last night. Whereas the traitors, we had no stress. We're just sat, we just have to not get caught, and we were very good at not getting caught. Because in this season, traitors, betrayals, have been the foundation layer of how traitors have been found. So a traitor's gone for a traitor.
Well, it's very good of you to come from your very big budget show to our very no budget show. And just so we can milk it for all it's worth, look down that camera 4.
Yes.
And convince them, say it, I am a faithful.
I am a faithful. It probably wasn't. I did a big smirk as well.
But well, it's old news now, though.
But I'm a smirker, so don't break character. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for coming in and thanks for entertaining us.
Hey, no problem.
I think I'm gonna have to go on the iPlayer.
Well, there's 2 series of it.
Well,
have I sold it to you?
No.
Watch season 1 first.
It's just the most luxury TV program. It's just,
it's the enduring power of character thing. That's the thing that's sort of kicking around in my head after this conversation.
Exactly right.
And Newscast will endure because there'll be another episode coming along on BBC Sounds very soon. But thank you for listening and watching to this one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Newscast.
Newscast from the BBC.
What is it that I've done that makes me the enemy?